In this video, I'm going to introduce you to the wonderful Asteraceae or sunflower family. An older name for it is the Compositae. So you will see that around in many references like the Peterson Field Guide. So please use the pages in your field botany manual also for a reference as we go through this family. This is a huge family, okay? Many species. It is the largest eudicot family. And we have anywhere from annuals and perennials, so herbs and some woody perennials and trees even. But I typically think of them as more uh, herbaceous or shrubs. But anyway, we can actually have trees in this family too. So here in this photos, we have our nasty starflower, which is a noxious weed. We also have other thistles. We have safflower, which is a crop, and sunflower also raised as a crop. And of course, we also have a lot of lovely native plants to California, like this Wyethia. So let's look at the family. And the most obvious thing is the inflorescence, okay? The inflorescence is a head. I'll get to that in just a moment. I'm not going to be addressing the leaves because the leaves vary, and that's also in your field botany manual. You can look at that. But the main thing that defines this family is the inflorescence, a head. Now, don't worry about radiate right now. That's what kind of head this is. And there are three main different types that we'll talk about, but there are other types of heads also. But let's just look at a head first. This is the diagram from your field botany manual. And what makes it a head is we have many flowers on a common receptacle, at least in this family, okay? Because sometimes the term head is used in other families and it may not have a common receptacle there, but in this family you do. So a common receptacle, which we normally think of going to each flower, they have their own. So here's our peduncle and our receptacle. The receptacle doesn't have to be flat. This is more or less flat. It can be domed. It can be more conical. And often the shape is used in identifying the species. Typically, we are going to have green things around the edge, okay, of this head. These green things are bracts, B-R-A-C-T-S. They are modified leaves, but we give them a special name because we see these in the sunflower family. You can call them filaries, or we can talk about the involucre of these filaries or bracts. So those, if you see anything green on the outside of the head, it's going to be the filaries. And oftentimes the arrangement of those is important in identifying the species too. Now, this being a radiate head, we're going to have two types of flowers. We're going to have ray flowers around the edge, and the ray flowers are what you would pull off if you, sorry, mouse is a little temperamental here. If you're doing he loves me not, you're pulling off entire flowers, not just petals. And so these ray flowers have bilateral symmetry. And if you look, this is the corolla here, this flat part, and it has typically 3 lobes, although they can be extremely tiny, or maybe it won't even be lobed at all, but 3, not 5, 3, okay? Then if we look at in the center of this head, we have disc flowers. Now, disc flowers are radially symmetrical, and you can see their corolla is fused, it's connate, and at the top, I'm just drawing one side. There's actually 5 little lobes, and we'll take a look at this in pictures in just a moment. 5 little lobes. So 2 types of flowers, ray flowers and disc flowers. And a couple other things that are true of all plants in the sunflower family. The ovaries are inferior. So you can see the ovary down here. Okay, it's inferior, and the corolla attaches on top of that. And you're thinking, oh, where's the sepals? Because sepals should be outside the corolla. We have sepals, usually, but we call it a pappus, P-A-P-P-U-S, and it's highly modified. We'll look at some, well, actually I only have pictures of one type, but you can have scales, you can have awns, which are AWN, which are straight and rigid. You can also have bristles. And bristles sounds really hard, but I think of them more as hairs because sometimes they're not very hard. So bristles though. So, so we have a modified uh, calyx, the pappus, okay, inferior ovary. And then another thing that we sometimes have is another bract, another type of bract that extends from the receptacle next to a flower. These are optional. Some have them, some don't, just like the pappus. And these are called palea, palea singular, Palea. If some of you are familiar with these sunflowers from before, you might have heard the term chaff. It's now called palea, at least in California when using gypsum. Okay. All right, so let's get to some photos because it's all very abstract at this point. This is some yellow ornamental shrub, which I'm not good with ornamental, so I actually don't know the scientific name of this plant. Oh my gosh, or the common name. But it's the one that I gave you in the bags, if you know, one I asked you to try and save for today, and at least for the 2021 field botany class. And so out here, okay, this is, what is it? It's the bracts, right? And not sepals. So these are filaries, okay? Or we can talk about the involucre. And in this case, it looks like they're fused together in the lower about half. That's a possible way of having them, but sometimes they're not fused. Depends. So those are the filaries, and you can see the big yellow corolla of the ray flowers, and you can see some disc flowers in here. Now, I dissected this, and this is the receptacle. You can see the depressions where the individual flower is attached. Here's the ovary of a disc flower, and we have a ray flower out here. I'll have a better picture of that. This does not have palea. Okay, there's none of those bracts attached directly to the receptacle. So here's a disc flower I got out, and here's the ovary again, inferior ovary. Here is the pappus, okay, which is of bristles, okay. And then here's the corolla, which I've slit open. It would be fused up to this point normally. And now we got to talk about something else, okay? We haven't talked yet about what's going on with the stamens or what's happening with the rest of the pistil. So the stamens are actually adnate to the corolla tube. So here's the filament of one coming off right about here. Here's a filament of another. And the anthers adhere together and release the pollen to the inside of that tube, okay? One thing also I should mention is the ovary is made up of two fused carpels. All right. So if we look at these, I tried to, it's kind of weird, but not very focused, but I have some better pictures of other species in a moment. You have this tube of the anthers, and it's going to release the pollen first. It's going to mature first. And then this has what's called plunger style presentation of the pollen, I guess, because there's going to be two style branches, but they're together, and you often have a style appendage on the top of each other. Think of it as like a brush to help push the pollen out. So they're together, and when the pollen is being matured, the styles are going to be short. They're down here. But as they grow up through the center of this tube, you can see it right here. They're pushing out. They're actually plunging out the pollen and presenting that to pollinators. Then when it gets a little bit later and the styles come out, you can start to see the two style branches. I'll show this again in a later plant. Not a great picture, but you can see here some of the pollen being presented. This is the tube of the anthers, and here you can see the two style branches. Okay, going now to the ray flowers. So the ray flowers, we said, are bilaterally symmetrical, and you can see the corolla here. this flattened part with the three lobes. And you can see it forms a tube here, and there's the inferior ovary. Now, ray flowers are either female, pistillate, or sterile. Okay, so two possibilities, pistillate or sterile. The disc flowers, I didn't mention this, but the disc flowers are generally bisexual, usually bisexual. But if not, they are either male, or we can call that staminate, or sterile. So there's also a difference in the sexualities of these two types of flowers. All right, here's an ornamental that I do know the name of. This is Cosmos. I think a couple of you got some of these in the bag. And you can see here, these right here, these are the two style branches that have come farther out of, oh, dear, dear, dear. Out of focus back here. All right. You know, the branches have not pulled away from each other yet, but here they're pulling away from each other and back. And so where is the stigmatic surface? It's not at the very tip of the style branches. That may have that brush, but it's, or appendage, all right, but it's usually, always one of two things, always one of two things. It's on the inner surface of the style branch, or it can be marginal. That is, it can be along the two sides, okay, still inner surface, but two sides of the style branches. And that's where the stigma is then, basically, stigmatic surface. So here better, you can see the pollen being presented to a pollinator, and then we're now in the female stage of flowering. All right, I was very happy to look at this and find out that we have palea, because the other ones that I dissected first, there were no palea, and I wanted to show you this. Not very clear, but you can see this bract right here comes from the common receptacle. And when I manipulated, you can see that is a bract that comes from the common receptacle. And yet again, now I pulled out a couple of disc flowers, and you can clearly see on this one, this bract came all the way down from there, where we also have the inferior ovary. So you may have palea, you may not. Okay, you have to look. Okay, so radiate heads, we have ray and disc flowers. Liguliflorous head, I'll never forgive the Jepson manual for making that change. It used to be an easier term, but liguliflorous head has only one type of flowers, ligulate flowers. The common dandelion is an example of this. So you're probably familiar with what dandelions look like, Taraxacum officinale. And so here's a dandelion, and I'll show you close up in just a moment. But what makes ligulate flowers is you have this strap shape to it. So they're bilaterally symmetrical, and you have 5 little lobes at the tips. Okay. And of course, if you only have this type of flower, they've got to be bisexual, unless it's completely sterile, which we won't get into right now. All right, so here's a side view of our dandelion, and you can see we have 2 different types of our filaries on here. Some of them are folding back at this point, and others are not. So again, characteristics that can be very important. Here's, you can see they're not yet folding back, but there's one, what's called a series, where you have different levels where they attach, or different heights. They call them series. Anyway, there's our filaries, and this keeps going back and forth. There we go. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little lobes at the tip of a ligulate flower. Okay. And as I said, they should be bisexual. So I was quite pleased to see this, because I had never looked in detail at the fruits of a dandelion. And so here is the pappus. These are bristles. Again, they don't look very tough. They aren't. I mean, you know, when you think about dandelion fluff, that's what this is. Okay, that's this. It carries the fruits away. So this fluffy stuff, that's the pappus. And then we have this seed here. Let's look at the pappus a little bit more. Bristles here. And here's the seed. which this is so cool. I think Jepson says rough in the distal, that is away from where it attaches, third. But I mean, they should really describe this better because it's so cool with these little, they're not barbs, but little extensions. And you can see the millimeter ruler here. Okay, now let's go on to a discoid head. And we're going to use a Senecio vulgaris for this. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Senecio first before we explain what discoid head is. Senecio commonly can be referred to as ground cells. I'm forgetting the other one. Ragworts, right, or butterweeds, okay? And Senecio vulgaris doesn't mean vulgar. Well, in a way it does. It means common. So this is the common ground cell or this butterweed, but I don't usually use butterweed. I use common ground cell. Senecio now has some species taken out of it for a while ago and put into another genus called Pachyra, Packera. So Senecio and Pachyra are very similar. We won't worry about that right now. I will tell you one thing, that when I was rekeying this to try and see if it was easy for us to key in, you have to say something that is kind of funny when you get to the actual plant, because anyway, let's not worry about it. So here is Senecio vulgaris, common ground cell. It is a very common weed. If you look in yards, edges of roads, you probably see this, and you may see it going to seed. But let's look at the heads. Clearly, these look different than the other heads. Oh yeah, we won't worry about this. We'll use this for potentially keying. It's kind of hairy when he's young, but that goes away. Okay, here's the head. This is a discoid head, okay? There are no ray flowers. There are no ligulate flowers. There are only disc flowers, okay? Now, in the genus Senecio, you can have radiate flowers. Different species have radiate heads, sorry. But this particular one is a discoid head. This particular species has discoid heads. So it's very common to have these two. You have your main filaries, quite long, and then you have these tiny, tiny reduced filaries. And to get to Senecio, you actually have to say there's only one set of filaries. So it's kind of funny that, but anyway, that's what you learn sometimes when you start keying things out. It is fairly common in Senecio to have the filaries black tipped like this, not always, but the species does. In any case, here's our filaries, and here's look at these lovely style branches of our disc flowers. And if you cut the head open, all right, and we look a little bit more detail, you can see the inferior ovaries, and you can see the bristles for the pappus. There's no palliae, all right, and taking some of the flowers out, okay, you can see this is younger stage than these, since you have the style branches open. All right, and when you look at, let me just keep going. When you look at a head that has gone to seed and fruit, here's the fruit, which, oh my gosh, I don't think I mentioned yet. What is that fruit type? It's an achene, okay? All sunflower family plants have achenes as their fruits. One seeded achenes. There was only one ovule in there to begin with. All right, think of that the next time you're having sunflower seeds. Those are actually sunflower fruits, and you crack through the outside, the ovary wall, to get to the seed that's inside. Sorry about that. I should put that at the beginning. All right, so, and here's these bristles. And you have these little ridges on this one. That's really cute. There you go. All right, well, I hope you have enjoyed the romp through 3 types of heads in Sunflower Family. And of course, there are more, as I said, and I'll see you in class.